Today's chapter is Chapter 6, Hawthorne's Son, right after the Monolita escapade that Clarence was in. I do remember it like it was last week. Silva stared out the door, feeling slightly peeved as she watched the druid disappear down the long stretch, long legs pumping. She could feel the curious stares of the other mages prickling against her back, but she ignored them with practiced ease. Faligan stepped up to her, chest still heaving slightly from his fight to get through the crowd. "You let him get away!" "He did me a favor. I simply returned it. Besides, he's the only one in years with the guts to ask me to dance." "Is that why you accepted?" "Very proper." He raised an eyebrow at her. "Don't lecture me on what's proper. You're in no position to judge." Her half-brother smiled. "I can't help who my father is. I'm exotic." She rolled her eyes at him. "Oh, that's what you're calling it. Exotic. You're lucky all you have is that necklace and not a full set of chains." He grinned and brushed his fingers against a slim black necklace that sat around his neck. "Admit it, you wished father gave you jewelry too." He laughed as she rolled her eyes at him irritably and pulled 2 wine glasses from a passing server's tray and offered. Give me a second. He grinned and brushed his finger. Wait, no. He laughed as she rolled her eyes at him irritably and pulled 2 wine glasses from a passing server's tray, offering her one. There we go. She regarded the glass and looked at him narrowly. "You're insufferable." He waggled the glass at her. "You can't say I haven't earned my place, or the benefits that come with it." She looked at him wryly. No, she couldn't deny that. He had the bodies to prove it. She took the offered glass, and they began walking back to her table. "What did he have for you that was so important anyways?" her brother asked, taking a big gulp of wine. "Nothing much, just my cut of spiderwood," she remarked, making a point to slip lightly on her wine. "Ah." Her brother drained the cup and discarded it on a passing table. "I'm surprised you didn't pick it up yourself." "I was going to, but well, it's raining." Faligan laughed. "How prudent. Did you see the druid's boots? The mud compliments him much better than it would ever have complimented you." "You tire me, brother. Go bother someone else, or I'll have the red cloaks throw you back in chains," she replied. "This is why you don't get asked to dance. No one has the guts to ask you because you're too irritable. Relax a little. Have a few more glasses of wine. Flirt." "I swear, another word out of your mouth." She raised an arm at him playfully, and he hopped away laughing. Okay. He leaned in and whispered with a wink, "I'll leave you to your druid fantasies." Silva raised a twitching finger, but he was already peeling away from her, dropping his empty glass off on a waiter's tray. Noted, he has 2 glasses of wine. Don't know where that third one came from.
You mean the second one?
No, the third one, because he had 2 in his hand, and then he handed one to Silva, then he downed one, and then he put that on the table, then he put the other one on another table. Or, no, to a server. Dang. The secret third glass.
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Leave it in. I think it's
probably not going to fix that error.
I think,
but they'll have to buy the book to know.
You have to buy the book. Like, it's not like you're looking right now. Anyways, on a waiter's tray. She watched as he slipped between a mage and his partner, spinning her away from the young man. Faligan had guts, but it helped that he was dangerous. The man he had stolen the girl from was one of the Remor Valakstrom's sons.
Remor
Valakstrom's sons.
There we go.
No one else in the room would have dared, but Faligan had a golden ticket. He was a key asset of their fathers, and everyone in the room knew it. He was unwaveringly loyal. "Miss Silva," a young man greeted her. It took her a moment to place his face. Councilmember Hawthorne's son. He was of average height, with medium brown hair, and held himself more like a soldier than a member of one of the high families. Understandable, considering who his father was. "Yes?" The young man smiled. He seemed a little out of place, but he continued talking anyways. "I couldn't help but overhear that you were disappointed with the quality of men who frequent this establishment. Would you like to dance?" She looked the young man over and was amused when he didn't flinch or glance away. His family was one of the few on the council without a floating island, not quite as high-ranking as the others in the room. It would serve him right if she said no for his brazenness, but she felt like it was probably the night for whispering, and she liked the way he didn't waver under her stare. I suppose, as long as you promise not to run away like a scared rabbit. I won't. She raised an eyebrow, but she let him escort her to the dance floor. He was stiffer than the druid, more proper and exact with his movement. Predictable yet less fluid, following the dance exactly as prescribed. What brings you to Garthulin, Mr. Tilwind, Hawthorne, miss. We are gathering a few mages for a little expedition into the sunken island of Solaith. My father has other business to attend to as well. You're here to burn time, then? Tilwind nodded. It's something to do. Are you saying you don't like the Monolita's nightlife? Tilwind looked at her. Miss Silva, most everyone here are foolish youth, you and your brother excluded. Her eyes narrowed, trying to see if she could identify flattery in his tone. Aren't all youth foolish? What excludes you? Tilwind seemed to turn the question over in his head and shrugged. I can't afford foolishness. Neither can you nor your brother. Oh. Everyone can afford a little foolishness, don't you think? You're dancing with me for one, and these fools around us have been wise enough to keep their distance. Tilwind didn't look away or avert his eyes. I know what I'm doing, and it's not as daring as my peers might think. Daring is pulling eggs from a dragon's nest. Asking a beautiful woman to dance is something I got over for some time now. Silva rolled her eyes, but her stomach fluttered at the compliment. It's not my looks that keep them away. Give it some thought and you might realize that you're closer to stealing eggs from a dragon. Tilwind shook his head seriously. No, I've taken dragon eggs. This is less difficult and much less risky. Perhaps the real trouble is that most of our peers have not tried taking dragon eggs. It goes to stand that they wouldn't understand the nature of risks. Silva didn't know how to respond. She generally came to sip wine and converse with friends, and, well, she often caught the curious gazes of men in the room. They kept their distance. It was as tantalizing as playing with fire, just considerably more lethal, considering her position as Albion's favorite daughter. She had rarely been asked to dance. No one had in some time. Twice in one night was a lot. She really didn't count the druid, though. It'd be like giving credit to a child. He was clueless. Tilwind, however, was another matter altogether. He knew, like any other mage, what trouble he might get in with Albion if he let so little as an eyelash fall on her. He was either madly infatuated with her or up to something, and if there was something Silva did know, mages were always up to something. They danced in relative silence for another song before Tilwind walked her back to the side of the room. Are you looking for anyone else to join your little escapade? She asked innocently. I don't know. Do you know someone? Tilwind responded curtly. Well, me, of course. Tilwind stiffened a little, then shook his head. As a skilled and powerful mage, you are exactly what we need, Miss Silva, but I would not risk you or another woman's safety in the sunken city. In addition, if you were injured or killed while under our care, it would certainly bring down the wrath of your father. We simply cannot take that risk. She nodded and smiled curtly while he bowed and took his leave. She had expected such a response. While she couldn't deny that there was some truth to what he said, he probably was refusing because he didn't want her to know what they were up to. The sunken island was dangerous, but nothing a member of the High Council couldn't handle, especially if he were bringing a party along with him. As she watched him work his way through the crowd, she realized that she didn't care what he was up to. The dance was nice. It appeared that some young men weren't cowards after all. Regardless of Tilwind's true motives, whatever they were, the dance had been quite enjoyable. Now we're on to Chapter 7, Clarence and Context.
Any comments, Brandon?
Yeah, you're the one who talks, and I'm the one who reads, and he's the one who writes, so...
No, none yet. However, that's a bold statement saying it's easier to steal dragon eggs than deal with a temperamental sounding wizard.
A temperamental mage.
Sure, we'll go with that, yes. Bold of him.
He's a bold guy.
He's not a coward. He's brave.
He's chill.
Yeah.
There's a very fine line between foolhardy and brave.
Yeah,
He rides that line.
Yeah.
Also, a little. It's not that he's unaware, but like just like the thing where he's like, yeah, definitely the dragon eggs are way scarier than this circumstance. Like, he's gotten over it, but I think he got over it a little too much.
Yeah, he's a little too calm for someone who's
He's not empty-headed, but he is simple.
from what I'm gathering, okay, is her half brother or whatever their relationship is, honestly, from what I gathered, seemed somewhat incestuous.
Remind me what that word means. I mean, I know all words.
Siblings smashing.
No,
Yeah, that's why I said
they
somewhat.
not. Silva,
No, that
do not.
I get what
Pelican
you're saying. Yeah,
crows.
is he a little bit of a?
Oh, he's a weirdo. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
see, yeah.
He has problems. Silva is aware he has problems.
But the way
Not.
she deals with it is far too calm. A bit more disgust with what he is, and that implication would
Maybe replace some playful with threatening.
yeah, more
Hand.
threatening, because whenever she says playful hand gestures, it sounds way too inviting.
Oh, interesting.
And this,
Fiery finger guns.
please keep in mind that this is sad to say this, coming from someone who's read a lot of light novels, and for some reason incest is a very big thing.
Those darn sister complexes.
And it's these implications that are making me think, oh, that type of relationship
Oh no.
behind closed doors,
Yeah,
they
no.
are buddy. Yeah,
No,
But-
it's not like that at all.
of course. But that's the implication I received.
Hey, you who's writing fan fiction, stop. We haven't even released the book yet. And also, what? That's gross. No, please stop. Thank you.
How many? No. Good times. Let's see, what else was there? Back to the wizard that just got done dancing with Silva. He, for how powerful her family sounds, he sounds like his give a damn is busted, to put it simply. Either he doesn't care how powerful the family is, or hasn't fully gauged how powerful this family is. Then again, I don't know.
That's great.
So,
That's
if
great.
you-
That's great.
That's a good way of.
No spoilers, Joe.
I have more context.
Yeah.
I do have more context, so I won't say anything.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear.
I guess that sets it up well.
Right.
I
So
do
right
wanna
now you're
say-
trying to figure
what
out,
is-
does he actually know what he's doing, or is he being
Is
Or
dumb?
is he an
stupid?
Yeah.
idiot?
Yeah, well, you'll find out, but you won't find out for
For a while. Turns out he actually is just a big dingus. Just
like 20 more chapters.
Silva, I got this dragon egg for you. See, that wasn't very hard.
We won't mention it's been in the family for
Generations.
generations.
It takes 600 years for an egg to hatch in its natural environment, and it's not currently in its natural environment.
It will never hatch.
No, it's yeah.
Crack.
Crack. Hey, who wants scrambled eggs? I do. Okay, back to chapter 7.
Man, something's wrong with that panda. Sorry, I'm playing Minecraft, right?
Pandas
While I'm
have
listening to the story.
problems.
And it was doing flips. Just
Pandas are the laziest, most
And-
adorable creatures on Earth.
they're the most adorable of the Earth sign
They are,
species.
they are
Well, I'll tell you
lazying
what,
themselves to
If
extinction.
I had to be locked in a cage with a bear,
If it's a
panda
you're
would be
good.
it.
I'll take a panda. I'll take a little red panda. That'd be adorable.
I mean, they're not actually pandas, but
Red pandas.
Red pandas are adorable. They're They're the red
They're like
version of
tree.
the trash panda.
Yeah, they're the red version of trash
they're
pandas.
red coons.
Yeah.
Koalas
Okay.
are actually the worst.
Bringing us
know that.
back to center.
What's your favorite animal? Leave it in the description the comment below. Comment your favorite animal.
What's your favorite animal from the book?
Yeah. Have we? The only
We've
animals
covered
we've talked about is
3 animals.
squirrel, frog,
Horse.
tree nymph,
Horses. Oh, tree nymph too.
blood. I wouldn't call it an animal, more like a evil.
Walking tree.
It's like The Walking Dead, but it's the walking tree.
You know, I'm
Walking
so
tree.
disappointed that I actually missed that tidbit, you know?
You know?
Which tidbit?
Oh yeah, you did, right? So they talk about tree nymphs, that there's tree nymphs in the forest and they walk
kill people
around
for
and they kill
fun.
people, they hunt them.
For new.
They're like young trees. You know the trees at Todd's?
Oh, man. Yeah, no.
They're about like the young trees at Todd's, maybe a little smaller and a little more girthy.
Think tree ant, but a bit
Human
more
size.
spindly and add more bloodlust.
Yeah, more
no,
people size.
And
so
more fast.
and I'll use, as a point of reference, there's a species in D&D called a twig blight.
Ooh.
And
really?
it's and it sounds like what you're referring to, and you guys were supposed to have ran into it during the campaign that I was running,
Oh.
but you didn't.
Well, I just want to put
Nice.
it out there that all my monsters are original.
They're the most
No.
original monsters.
I'm imagining
They're the best monsters. They're huge monsters.
I'm imagining a bit more red in the nymph part.
So what they do
pointy
is
fingers.
they hunt things and they kill them and they drag their bodies to their blood pools, and they throw their bodies in their blood pools, and then they eat the juices and the blood that comes off through their roots
Yummy.
in their blood pools. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That-
So that's kind of how they work.
Okay. Now on to chapter 7, I think.
Yes, Clarence and context.
We digress heavily. Okay. There was a large booming sound, and Clarence shook awake, immediately grateful to find himself tucked comfortably between the wood racks in his corner of the mill. Thunder crashed again. He lay there listening to the sound of the rain pattering against the roof. It was becoming increasingly obvious that he needed to fix the holes in his knowledge about this place. Oh, I thought he was about to say fix the holes
Holes in the roof. Yeah.
You
Not different.
got me there.
Different holes. Gotcha.
The angel should have been given him some kind of background. Good grief. Hours later, he heard the sound of the mill starting up and knew that it meant Ulrich was awake and working. He pulled himself out of bed and reached for his boots. They were still wet. He grimaced. He put his hand down the depths of one boot and groaned when he realized the insides were covered in mud. Fortunately, the mud was still damp, so hopefully they wouldn't be too hard to wipe out. He pulled on his socks and went out onto the mill floor, boots in hand, to a workbench he organized the other day. Opening a big drawer of rags, he set himself down next to the workbench and began wiping out his boots. A few moments later, he heard the heavy sound of footsteps and looked up to see Ulrich coming down the hall, carrying a large stack of freshly cut planks. He watched as Ulrich set them down. The big man nodded to him and gestured with his chin at Clarence. What happened? Go swim with your boots on? If only. Went dancing in my socks. Ulrich raised an eyebrow. In the mud? That came after the dancing, Clarence muttered. So what happened last night? Ulrich asked, pulling up a chair from the side of the workbench. Hand me one of those boots and a rag. That's awfully nice of him. Clarence passed them over, and then as they worked, related the story of what had happened, starting with getting on the courier's broom. Ulrich didn't say much throughout the telling. Clarence gave a slightly shortened version of his dance with Silva, focusing on his attempts to leave. Ulrich shook his head, chuckling slightly. Leave it to Silva to be so unpredictable. But, in all seriousness, boy, it was a foolish thing to do. Clarence shrugged. I mean, it worked out. I wouldn't be so sure it's over. Silva's a very important mage. the favored daughter of the council head. She is spontaneous at times, and her father wants her well taken care of. You make her sound like a princess. Clarence glanced over to the bigger man. Ulrich looked back. She basically is. Like I said, her father is the head of the Mage Council. And what does that mean? It was likely a dumb question, but Clarence figured he probably needed to know. Nymph's blood boy, how do you not know that? Ulrich asked. Clarence rubbed on his boot. Can I tell you something that's hard to hear? It sounds kind of crazy. Ulrich nodded, thick eyebrows thinking. I was hit by lightning, and now everything around me really doesn't fit together like it did before. I'm not who I was. I don't understand the world around me anymore. Ulrich relaxed a little. We all know you're a little odd, son. Figured you hit your head or something. What don't you know? Let's assume nothing, for the sake of clarity. Ulrich straightened up a little. About 20 years ago, now, we were caught up in a war between the necromancers and the mages. You heard of that? Yeah, they wiped out all the necromancers, right? Clarence guessed. Well, Albion, before anyone knew who he was, recruited a powerful necromancer to help fight for the Mage Council. A man known as the Necro Killer. The reason for the war again? Clarence asked. The Rotters were doing awful things, boy. Entire families slaughtered. Horrible experiments in monsters. It was like living in a nightmare. Some say the Necro Killer was sickened by it, but others say he wanted to cut down on the competition. So Albion got a necromancer to help. What does that have to do with him being head mage? But Ulrich was shaking his head. The Necro Killer was not just a necromancer. He was as much a monster as the others. Some say even more so. He was incredibly talented and very powerful. The atrocities that have been attributed to him are unimaginable. Even if he did keep us from becoming fodder for corpse walkers, he was no better than they were. He had to be dealt with after the war. What happened to him? Clarence asked. Albion killed him, Ulrich said. Clarence looked at Ulrich with a raised eyebrow. Why would Albion kill someone who he recruited? Necromancers are a plague, and Albion is committed to eliminating them. The Necro Killer couldn't have died to just anyone. Albion is a hard ruler in some ways. Us druids have seen better times when it comes to our relationship with mages, but he stood up and brushed the sawdust off his pants. No one is looking up to find a corpse of a loved one walking off or found their son's head on a wolf. It's not a bad price to pay. Clarence watched him thoughtfully, trying to keep his face neutral. Having Ulrich describe necromancers as a plague made him uncomfortable, though if he distanced himself as an outsider looking in, he definitely couldn't argue with him. He felt a cold pit in his stomach as he thought through the implications of what Ulrich had said. And you're saying Silva is Albion's daughter? The man who killed the Necro Killer? Ulrich winked at him. Don't worry too much, son. She's reasonable, but it's best to be careful around her. I think we can work this misunderstanding, just don't add to it. Clarence felt he was fairly sure it wasn't because he missed dinner the day before. Clarence felt ill. Period. Or Clarence felt ill, comma, and he was fairly sure.
I'll throw a comma,
comma, and he was fairly sure it wasn't because he missed dinner the day before. It wasn't a Chuck E. Cheese, man. As if sensing his darkened mood, Ulrich gave him a pat on the shoulder. Come now, there's a full day ahead of us. The rain's gonna clear up soon. It'll all work out. He handed Clarence his boot, and Clarence could have sworn it looked better than it had before it had gone through the mud. Now get your boots, and let's get this batch milled. Then you can finish up organizing the boards for the church. Just like Ulrich said, the rain did clear up, and by the time they were finished for the day, the skies were blue. Piper had a small group of neighborhood children. Piper, the person we now know, and a small group of neighborhood children who we do not know, were out playing in a large field that lay between the mill and the town. Clarence watched the small group laugh and shriek from his seat on the mill steps. He was still musing over what he'd learned from what he'd learned from Ulrich that morning. It unsettled him slightly, but the kids playing offered him a welcome distraction. Dyron sat down on the steps next to Clarence. He smiled as one of the kids went past, shrieking Piper hot on his heels. Heels. Another good day's work done, he said with a satisfied sigh. Clarence nodded. Yeah, not too bad. Dyron's gaze drifted across town. Have you decided where you're going to settle here and move on? Ulrich was telling me you were asking about property. Somewhere you could possibly put a cabin. Clarence let out a long breath. My plan was to save up and buy a ranch, but it seems most of this land is owned by the Mage Council and is rented out. That won't work for me. That's the way things are now, Dyron said. But things change. The land is ours, despite the Mage's claim. They may cut it up between themselves, but then tax us on what we've got, but we're still the ones who work it, raise our herds, live on it. In the end, we're the ones connected to it, not them. When you find a place for a cabin, we'll be here to help you raise it. He gave Clarence a slap on the thigh, then stood up, stretching out his back. I should get back to the wife and kids. Clarence nodded and watched as Dyron walked to Piper and picked up his son, who was barely old enough to crawl, then grabbed the hand of a curly-headed toddler girl. With a final wave to Piper, the trio headed off down the street. After some thought, Clarence got up and rolled across the field. He nodded to Piper as he walked by, noting the two remaining children as they played some game with polished river stones. Good to see you, Clarence, Piper smiled, handing one of the kids a small stone to toss at a couple of sticks driven in the earth. I heard you had an interesting visit at Garthulin. Ah, yes, Clarence thought. Word spread like wildfire in small towns, but who would have told her? He hadn't mentioned the details to anyone from Ulrich, and that had just been this morning. It was an adventure. Who told you? The courier, Tardaven. He said you made quite a scene at their fancy dance hall. Yeah, I asked a mage to dance. It was a mess. Clarence shrugged, trying to play it off. You didn't, Piper gasped. She looked mortified, but intrigued. Oh, but I did. Clarence grinned wryly. Like I said, it was an adventure. He had assumed that such a thing was uncommon from how the townspeople talked about mages and their pretentious city in the clouds. It was clearly not only unheard of, but apparently not dreamed of either. But what did she do to you? I can't believe you're still standing. Oh, just a little public humiliation, but I think I won the bout overall. Piper shook her head. You shouldn't play with witches. They'll burn you. I can't say it wasn't worth it. Clarence couldn't help smiling as the blonde girl shook her head again. She looked up at him, concern creasing her pretty face, and he couldn't help but marvel at how perfect her eyes were. Was every woman in this world a 10? It seems so. Don't play with witches, they'll burn you. This is where we left off, I think. Oh, are you looking for an early grave? We have them. They're available. Buy now. Look in the description below. Sorry.
Sponsored by getagrave.com.
We cannot
I cannot guarantee where that link will go.
Figure
Don't
that
click
out.
it.
Let us know in the comments below. But use like vague answers. Thank you. Okay. Are you looking for an early grave? Piper chided softly, shaking him free of his thoughts. Well, I'm headed back to the bog for a bit, so probably. Oh, really? Do you go often? I need some herbs that grow on the outskirts. Fall is here, so it's getting cold enough that it's pretty safe, but there still aren't many manly men willing to go with me. I lost my spot.
Indeed you did.
Go with me. Oh, really?
Oh, there it is. Okay. I don't need to go far. The plants I need just grow on the fringes. She looked at him hopefully. Almost pointedly, I imagine. Clarence nodded. That might not be so bad. A walk through the woods with a beautiful girl. One that wasn't dangerous. Sure, he agreed. Swing by the mill.
That he knows of.
That he knows of. He's pulling a Tilwind right now.
That's true.
She's not a dragon egg.
She is not a dragon egg. I know what they look like.
I know what those... It's big. Okay. Sure, he agreed. Swing by the mill about this time tomorrow, and I'll take you around to the edge of the bog. Piper smiled. Wonderful. Foreshadowing. Right? This is when that happens.
Foreshadowing, yeah. The next chapter. We can read the next chapter.
Heck yeah. A few hours later, Clarence completely forgot about his date, and since there was no phone or calendars, he was just gonna miss out.
No, it's tomorrow. He's gonna
I
meet
know,
with
but
her
I'm
tomorrow.
saying that he promptly forgot.
Oh yeah.
It's
You're not
too late.
wrong.
Wow.
That was a
You know,
problem for another day.
That his priorities seem a bit.
You know, when you get transported to another world and then you get a job
And a date.
and you're like, and a date, you're like, okay, moving on with life.
Okay.
A few hours later, Clarence was humming to himself as he walked through the bog, trying to find the perfect place to build his cabin. He had been giving his situation a lot of thought. The bog seemed the best place to develop and improve his necromancy. True, there were man-eating trees and probably goblins, orcs, and who know what else, but Clarence needed privacy to develop his skills so he could get a firm foothold on this world, and also not get lynched. After some walking, Clarence found a suitable place.
Who would want to kill Clarence?
Who would want to kill the main character, our best boy?
Can't imagine who.
Nobody. After some walking,
That's where you're wrong, kiddo.
oh, Fallagin is nobody. I do not regard him. That's how low. No regard. After some walking, Clarence found a suitable place about 20 minutes from town. It was a small clearing that was raised 10 or so feet from the surrounding pools. It offered plenty of shelter from the trees around it. He figured it was far enough in that he wouldn't be bothered by the townspeople, but close enough that walking to work wouldn't be too much of an inconvenience. A squirrel darted past him, startling him from his thoughts. Good, now he had something to practice on. He didn't like the idea of bringing things back from the dead, but he needed to figure it out. He was a necromancer, after all. Using corpses to do his will was pretty much the whole job description. Clarence hummed, reaching out with his necromancy, and crushed the squirrel's skull. It plopped motionless to the ground. Clarence focused on the dead squirrel and tried willing it to life as he hummed softly. The body spasmed and shook, then started to gasp, squeak. Clarence took several steps back from the morbid scene. His window popped up, but he brushed it away. He watched for 12 long seconds as the squirrel spasmed and gasped. It took 2 agonizing breaths, letting out a guttural chirp, then fell still once again. What had he just done to the little creature? Clarence paced back and forth, trying unsuccessfully to try again. He brushed his nose, then looked at the pop-up. Tutorial. Spell. Rudimentary raise dead. You can now raise dead. Recommendation. Become competent. End tutorial.
Oh my goodness. Really?
Isn't that so useful and helpful?
Oh my goodness. I love the good angel. She's so useless.
Favorite. Despite pacing for 10 minutes, Clarence was unable to bring himself to try a second time. It was just too unnatural, too callous, too morbid of a thing. No doubt it would take him a long time and hundreds of attempts to figure out the nuances of piloting a corpse. No, he decided for now he would just stick with crushing bones. If he ever wanted to play the part of a twisted puppet master, he could always try some other time. That's the end of chapter 7.
Hey, Brandon, she just doesn't want to mess with the order of things.
I'm sorry, who's she?
The good angel.
Oh, the good angel?
She's a simple god in a simple world.
No. She's a simple angel in a world that she let go to crap. Sorry. That's my perception of the stinking angel.
It gets better by book
It's
2.
so better.
You don't even know.
The context, you'll be like, oh my gosh, it was her the whole time. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that the good angel just can't. She's tries so
I
hard.
promise you, she's not malicious.
No, she just is incompetent.
Yes.
Oh yeah, she's the worst person to be in charge.
Which is why she picks competent people like Clarence.
Really competent people.
Yes.
She picks people who peaked in life at 20 something.
Yes. That's
That is
you're
a
going to
low
inherit
bar.
you're going to inherit. Well, it's
You're
not
going
like
to inherit a ranch in Nebraska.
fair. That is a lot older than the standard Isekai 15 or 14.
Isn't he 22?
Wait, how old?
Or is
I
he
don't
21?
remember. He's
I don't remember.
20-something.
He's whatever you want him to be.
Are you
Don't say that,
propositioning
Adam.
him to
Don't,
me?
don't
No, I'm
sell that
saying.
to the
Oh,
readers.
you guys.
Don't say that to the listeners.
point
No,
is-
he is at least 21.
35.
At
At
21
least
to 40.
18.
Between 20,
yeah, no,
least
he's at
20.
least 18. I think he's 21. All joking aside, I think he's 21.
Yeah. He can drink if he wants to.
And drive.
He can't drive.
He's
Well,
not in a
anymore.
place where he can.
Not in a combustion engine. Unless there is one somewhere.
Yeah, driving a carriage is different than or a car
Isn't
is
it
different
coaching a carriage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it, carriage.
You got this, horse.
We're in the last inning. You got it. That's I don't know how to be a coach.
all right. Let's do the next. Oh well,
This is a
Brandon.
fun
We have to let Brandon say what he
Yeah,
thinks.
Brandon, what were you thinking?
He's got to stop aiming for the head. Like
What?
he could aim for anything else. Crushing the head of the squirrel. Come on, he's done that like how many times? I don't know. I was absent for the 1, 2, a few times. I was absent for those, so I really don't know.
Yeah. But he breaks bones.
Yeah,
What he
he
does.
breaks bones. He could blow up the rib cage and just impale the heart with the bone fragments. Come on.
That's a good idea.
Oh no.
That's a
write
great idea.
notes. Story
What?
writer.
I will take that
notes.
and put it in my notebook.
That's my first thought is I want to do as
101
little,
ways to kill a squirrel.
as little visible damage
Clarence.
to my enemy with a banned magic. I'm going to blow up its heart.
Yeah, he's not. The thing
If you
about
go for the
Clarence
femur,
is
it'll
he's
take out
not
the
really
artery.
thinking about combat. I don't know if you've.
He's also not like a well-known in understanding and autonomy.
I don't know if you've noticed, but he doesn't really know what's going on around him.
He's like, I want to kill it.
My-
Head. Headshot. Yeah.
My,
like in the video games.
My main concern as a lover of worlds is if I was transported, learning about the world would be the first and foremost thing I did.
Well, that's what he did. He asked Ulrich some questions. He's been there. He's keeping a low
After like a
profile.
couple weeks
Yeah.
of
Yeah, a couple of weeks. Yeah, I've been around long enough. I can cue in a minute.
he might be. He might be in a
You know
little
how-
bit of shock. You know. He doesn't
A
know how to
little?
talk to these people. They say weird things like blood nymphs and kill all necromancers. He might not know how to talk to them.
stinking corpse walkers.
Yeah, those rotters.
Those
Yeah, like
puppet
I could
posers.
just go down a drain on how la-di-da the good angel is. Oh my goodness.
La-di-da is a very great description.
Thank you.
La-di-da-di-da-di-da. That's great. Okay. Moving on. You're
Both
gonna
his
love this
parents are
next
alive,
chapter.
Just one of them's a
Am I?
crackhead.
Am I?
Yeah,
Or was he?
yeah, you are.
Oh,
It gets good.
this is a great chapter.
You'll
this
love
was
it.
one of my favorites the last time we read through it.
All right,
If you loved anything else in this book, this is for you, Brandon.
This is for you, Brandon. You viewers, follow along. But yeah, Chapter 8, A Walk with Piper. Sounds nice. The creaking of the sawmill slowed to a halt after Ulrich shut the chute, cutting off the water to the mill. Chute is not spelled that way.
Well, shoot.
I know, right? Chute is C-H-U-T-E for that type of chute, which is silly.
Well, I don't care. We'll fix that in post.
This is post. Clarence deposited a large bog oak plank along the north wall, next to a similar sized board set aside for the Good Angel's church. The town was growing and getting ready to put an addition to the building. Clarence hadn't attended service yet. He would probably end up helping with the project, though. All the men in town were going to pitch in, and Ulrich was providing the needed lumber free of charge. The big man had plenty of it, and getting rid of the excess wood and getting rid of the excess would make the task of organizing the warehouse manageable. Clarence glanced out the big barn doors and could see Piper making her way across the empty field. He went to his area between the two racks of wood where his bedroll was comfortably tucked away. He grabbed his axe, strapped it to his belt, and slung his pack over one shoulder. He met Piper out front. She had a big cloth bag hanging over her shoulder, her eyes brimming with excitement. "How was your day, Clarence?" Piper asked as they began their walk to the bog. Good. I've scrounged almost all the wood for the church. Ulrich has been cutting the support beams, so we should have everything together in the next few days." "That's great to hear. So many people had to stand on the back or outside. It'll be nice to have seats for everyone." Piper fingered a small gold pendant of a woman that hung around her neck. "Speaking of, I haven't seen you in church." "Well, I haven't been coming. Was a bit of an agnostic. Going to church is not something I ever got into the habit of." Piper looked Clarence up and down. "Even the most cynical mages go to the Good Angel's Church. I don't think I've met a druid that doesn't attend." "What, there isn't anybody who doesn't go to the church?" he asked. She looked thoughtful, rubbing her pendant. "I guess it was more common among the necromancers not to attend, but well, you know what happened to them." Of course they didn't. Clarence pursed his lips
The
thoughtfully.
implication being that they didn't go to church, so they all died. I'm sorry. It's just funny.
Ah, yes. Blasphemers die.
Yes. Ugh.
The good
Oh
angel.
my goodness! I'm thinking about the good angel again. It's annoying me.
The good angel. "Oh, we can't have that. You need to go to. You're not going to church? Oh boy, your subscription to life has ended."
Yeah, that's not actually how it works, but
No, that isn't how that happened, at all. Great to hear. Haven't been going.
of course they didn't.
Of course they didn't. Clarence pursed his lips thoughtfully. Necromancers. He seemed to fit the bill more than he liked. A disturbing thought. "So you think they deserved what they got?" Piper let out a soft breath. "They were stealing our debt at best, kidnapping and killing people at worst. I don't really know how bad it was. It was enough of a problem for the most powerful necromancer among them to turn against his own people and assist the mage and the council in their eradication." She looked at Clarence, her face grave. "It said he didn't put up a fight when Albion came for him. He truly believed the world would be better with the complete elimination of his race." Clarence absently scanned the force ahead of them.
Excuse me?
That's what's said, yeah.
That's what Piper
blind faith. I love it.
thinks. Love blind faith. Why? Because we're told to.
Yes! No!
What are we doing? Oh, why are we doing it? He told so. What's the good angel's stance on their extermination? The church, I mean. He had a strong suspicion that this good angel was the angel from the swamp, so he hadn't been in a hurry to attend. But if they were one and the same, then she clearly didn't have the issue. But if they were one and the same, then she clearly didn't have an issue with necromancers. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here. There needs to be a comma there. Give me a second. Comma? Okay. It's not exactly consistent, Piper explained. The mage acolytes preached that it was the good angel's will that the necromancers be cleansed from the earth. On the other hand, druid priests and acolytes have no public stance. They teach her word and let us come to our own conclusions. I can't see her wanting an entire people killed, though. It doesn't go along with what she teaches about peace and fulfilling your role in the world.
Ah, finally! Something that the good angel says
Clarence
makes sense.
nodded. That was probably the most diplomatic position for the druids to adopt. Their conversation slowed to a stop as Piper began picking plants, placing them in her bag. Clarence watched her picking through the deep green foliage around them, pondering what they'd discussed. If the good angel was the entity that relocated him, the most plausible explanation, then the mage sect was certainly wrong, very wrong. That would leave the druid sect with no spine. The good angel must be in a rough position if she was expecting Clarence to level things out. Good thing she had unlimited access to millions of people to replace him, he thought wryly. No, Clarence decided he wouldn't be going to church anytime soon. A sharp gasp from behind him brought him to his thoughts, and he turned around quickly. Piper stood still, her body stiff as she stared across a small pool to a nearby tree. What is it? He asked, beginning to feel slightly uneasy. That tree moved, she whispered, pointing to what appeared to be a young bog oak. Clarence stared at the motionless tree. Are you sure? Yes, it moved. We need to leave. I think we're in a blood pool. Piper's eyes were wide and frantic, scanning the forest around them. A blood pool? What on earth is a blood pool? He asked. She glanced back at him sharply, looking almost exasperated, though she was still obviously afraid. Where blood nymphs drop off the bodies of their victims to feed on? For the good angel's sake. For the good angel's sake, don't you know anything?
No.
Funny thing,
Oh, boy.
actually.
She's gonna love my answer. No.
No. Please do tell. This is a time to I just really feel like now's the time for you to give some extrapolation. Just some heavy exposition in this blood pool. You know,
Yes.
in anime, they take a good 30 minutes talking about this before anything happens.
About how deadly the blood nymphs are, and
They attack immediately when they see someone.
Yeah, exactly.
They actually mention it at the start of the chapter, you know? They're like, yeah, so we shouldn't run to any of those. And quick cut to everyone dying and being murdered by blood nymphs.
Yep.
We just ran into it's like they're only in the deepest part of the bogs.
Huh.
Fast forward, they were not in the deepest part of the bogs.
No, they were not.
They were after that free real estate.
It's free real estate.
Real estate.
She shook her head in irritation, as if she clearly
me
didn't
too.
have time to deal with him, and turned back to the young tree, eyeing its gently moving leaves suspiciously. A thought struck Clarence. He hummed softly, activating his fine dead hex, and focused it down under their feet. The ground underneath lit in a network of bones and animal debris, and it took Clarence all he had not to flinch back. The entire area around them was littered with thousands of bones. They were standing on top of a graveyard that sank deep, deep beneath them. He set his hand on his axe, hair standing on the back of his neck. Movement caught the corner of Clarence's eye. He turned to see another young-looking bog oak sway slightly. The water around its roots rippled. Clarence took a swift step, facing Piper, eyeing the tree behind her as it too quivered. Piper took in a shallow breath as Clarence heard a soft splat of a footstep from behind him, and he knew he needed to move quickly. He popped the cover off his axe. He muttered softly, offering the axe to Piper. Take this. You can't be serious. Piper's tone was incredulous as she looked at him with pretty eyes flashing in disgust. What kind of man are you? We're about to find out. Clarence pressed the accent because she doesn't know. Clarence pressed. I love thinking about being in her position where it's like, oh no, we're gonna die. Here, take this. Defend yourself,
Woman.
Queen and country.
Clarence pressed the axe into her trembling fingers, not letting her refuse. Then he stepped around her, popping his neck to the either side. The nymph ahead of him was clearly in view, trunk open to reveal a leering grin. Hoping that he was silent enough that Piper couldn't hear, Clarence began singing Another One Bites the Dust under his breath. I forgot he did that. Then, power tingling, Clarence tried breaking the closest nymph's face. His screen popped up, obscuring his view. Tutorial. New hex acquired. Hex type, crude. Hex name, crush fauna. You can now crush fauna. End tutorial. Clarence swiped at his nose, closing the damn window. He could feel the hex take hold, but whatever it was wasn't doing much, as all the nymph did was scrunch its nose like it was relieving an inch and kept walking towards him. In desperation, Clarence changed locations of the hex to the creature's knee. A scream from Piper informed him that at least one was coming from her direction. With a surge of magic, the limb popped violently, blowing the leg off the kneecap. With a creaking moan, the nymph collapsed to the side. Clarence whirled around, somehow keeping up his flustered rendition of "Another One Bites the Dust," only to find 3 more running at them. Clarence tried sending the hex across them, but the hex was spread too thin, proving ineffective. Quickly, he refocused his attention and dumped the hex into the closest one. Both of its knees cracked, and it flopped forward onto its face, its own wail silenced by the mud of the pool. Taking a quick swipe at his nose, Clarence eyed his stats. He was getting low on mana. 1.5 ticks, perhaps 2 more hexes, and then that would be it. As the last 2 nymphs closed in, Clarence pivoted and grabbed Piper around her shoulders, pulling her to the ground. As they fell, he dumped all his remaining mana at the scattered bones buried beneath the approaching nymph's feet.
Dear.
All the bones. And some deer bones, I bet.
Yeah.
I think our listener
Some
Taka
mammoth bones. Who knows what's in there?
Mistake sauce.
If you know what I'm referencing, leave it in the comments below.
As the last 2 nymphs, it's taking a quick step.
Give me a second.
Swipe at his nose. Yeah.
That your phrase,
That's right. I can put
I
my
can't-
cursor.
it's that your paragraph is separated weird. I won't deal with that.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
As they fell, he dumped all of his remaining mana at the scattered bones buried beneath the approaching nymph's feet. Bones exploded, blasting through the dirt and sending one of the nymphs flying. Clarence held Piper tight, shielding her as bone fragments and mud peppered his back from head to heel, mud and debris flung all around them. A moment passed before Clarence let go of Piper. He rolled onto his feet, coming up in a crouch, trying to keep his feet under him with him in the mushy ground. The last nymph, unaffected by the blast, dug its spiky wooden fingers into his shoulder. He screamed as it lifted him off the ground with one hand while it swung at him with the other. There was just a split second to process the massive club that was hurtling towards him before it struck. His ribs cracked. Gasping, Clarence flailed at the club arm to keep the thing from pulling it back, only to have it rip through his clenching fingers and brought down in another violent swing. The second hit sent a shock up the side of his leg. Then a loud, solid thwack reverberated through the entire
creature's
wooden frame, echoing painfully through Clarence's shoulder. The creature froze in place, leaving Clarence suspended in air, his body swinging painfully from his shoulder. Turning his head desperately, he got a glimpse as Piper pulled the axe free from the back of the nymph's head. The nymph remained frozen in place. She then proceeded to chop through one of its legs, toppling it to the ground, dropping Clarence with it. He hit the mushy ground hard, pain shooting through his fractured chest and reverberating in his shoulder where the creature's fingers held him tight. Without a word, Piper began to chop at the arm that still gripped Clarence. He bit down on his shirt collar, trying to stifle the involuntary shrieks of pain that came from each impact of Piper's swings. One final chop and Clarence was able to stagger to his feet, the forearm of the nymph still hanging from the fingers that were sunk deep into his shoulder. Clarence pulled at the hand lodged in his shoulder. The fingers didn't budge, and the thought of forcing it made his head swim. Looking for distraction, he scanned the swamp around him, looking for signs of any more nymphs. The one he had launched into the air was buried deep into the mud, about 20 feet away. The 2 nymphs he had cut off at the knees were slowly crawling forward, heading towards them. Piper stepped forward nervously, arms shaking as she raised her axe at them. Clarence took 3 long breaths. "I'll finish him," he offered, reaching out for the axe. "Now you want the axe?" She shook her head, but didn't resist when he pulled the axe away, and she quickly stepped away from the slowly approaching creatures.
You can take a drink of water.
Drink break. Okay. Now you want the axe.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
She shook her head, but didn't resist when he pulled the axe away, and she quickly stepped away from the slowly approaching creatures. Clarence stepped forward to the first and drove his axe into the back of its head. The thing dropped, and with a quick tug, he had the axe out and into the head of the other. Deciding that wasn't quite good enough, he started hacking until both the both their heads detached. The one he had blasted looked good and stuck, so he decided to leave it. He took a deep breath and felt like he had inhaled a lungful of rotten dust. A strange scent of powdery rot hung in the air, thick and sweet. It must be from the bones he'd exploded. Had he turned them to vapor? Clarence walked to where Piper retreated under a big elm. Clarence grinned at her. I must say, you saved us back there. Piper sniffed, giving him a side eye. You're not much of a man, or much a fighter. Clarence gave her half a shrug, wincing in pain. Well, you get what you pay for, I suppose. What'd you do to him? Piper waved her hand at the creatures. I didn't do anything to them. I don't know half of what just happened. Clarence feigned a frown.
What?
My shoulder. If I were to guess, we had just been a witness to a miracle from the good angel, she pointed to the struggling nymph. We should go. That thing is working its way out. Clarence staggered forward, thinking about arguing with her about the miracle conclusion, but that would reveal that he was a necromancer and that the good angel had brought him here. Did that make his action a miracle from the good angel? He didn't know, but it was fairly sure that's how Piper would see it. Either way, a losing argument. Piper led the way back towards town, and Clarence followed, holding his shoulder.
Oof. Chapter 8. What do you think, Brandon?
Talk about a rough first date.
Okay.
Am I right?
Okay. Yeah. You know, in a hostile world, I think I'd learn how to fight. I mean, good on him with the axe, but I mean with magic, what I was sent here to use.
But
you know,
he used magic.
He did. He didn't read. What he first realized was that
did that not
wood,
read with him using magic?
wood is not the same as bone. So he thought he was like, oh, I've dealt with this. I could just try
I can
this.
break bones.
And then it was like, ha, wood is different. Get wrecked, noob.
No, what I'm getting at is, I would have been training it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
he wasn't
lot.
exactly doing that.
Yeah, well, he has a day job, Brandon.
Yeah.
There is the nighttime, and if he is going out into the woods alone, perfect time.
Yeah. So we're gonna get there. Don't worry.
Oh,
It's a
yeah,
little bit of a
yeah.
slow
We'll
burn.
get to the training montage, okay? Gosh.
Yeah, Joe's not wrong. It's just a training montage.
It's just a montage, nothing more.
Yeah.
Why? In my head, you know what I imagined, and I hate
Marshall?
myself for having imagined.
Marshall's training montage at the very beginning of the episode where he's just like, I don't know what he's doing. He's just bouncing the weights really crazy, and then he's like, I'm strong.
No, I was
Man,
actually
I
thinking
can get a
of
full set done in 5 minutes.
the
Nice.
training that vampires do in Twilight, in the movie specifically, which is the
Which is not much.
oh yeah, that's exactly what I imagined, and it was
He gets more than that.
so cringe.
He gets.
We'll get to
This is-
training. You'll
In
really
case
like
you
training.
didn't know, this wasn't written by
Stephanie Myers.
Stephanie Meyer.
But if
Yeah.
you read The Host is a great book.
The host is
Just
great.
throwing it out there.
Shout out to.
You would
that
probably
book
like it, Brandon.
specifically.
It's a good book.
You would like the book. I recommend that.
Yeah, it's good.
Look in the
Anyway.
description below for just the name of the book, which we already said. I'm not going to share a link to that.
I'm
That'd be too short.
definitely doing that for sure.
Oh, he's doing that. I'm not.
Oh, without a question of a doubt.
Oh yeah, that's happening. We'll
Okay.
remember this.
Okay, so you want him to get into the training. That feels
I'm
like he's
so excited.
We're
for
in
his
chapter
training
9
montage.
and he still hasn't tried to become competent. Is that the problem?
The tutorial was
In a
very
hostile
vaguely
world,
specific.
indeed.
Okay. So that's irking you a little bit. Okay.
Good.
That's
As a rational individual that
Yeah,
has been
yeah.
teleported to another world,
It's what we want you to feel.
this
it's-
is
Good.
I'll say the incompetence is what is driving me up the wall.
it's a silly book, isn't it?
He's a silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Clarence
silly.
is like he's still at this point. I wanted him to feel like he still wants his ranch, right? That's where his head is. He's like, okay, I just want to start over.
And he's not exactly in the mindset of, I must restore balance.
To this world and become the hero.
Definitely the good angel.
But
has kept him
I hear
from
you, Brandon. I
participating
think
in
that's
those.
a fair frustration. Does it ruin the book for you?
No.
Okay.
No.
We're
It just
moving on then.
it just agitates me that he's just like, yeah, hostile world, not gonna do anything about that.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna keep working my 9 to 5.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'd rather do this whole wood.
I think he's
thing, then-
trying not to think about.
Don't worry,
Everything.
Brandon. I got you covered.
Don't worry.
Ah,
He'll find reasons.
fantastic.
I got you. He'll find reasons to live the little.
He'll
He'll
get
find
his
reasons.
hero arc.
Yeah, he'll get
Is
his
it,
hero arc.
is,
Don't
is it
worry.
bad? I would just love to read this.
Yes.
Like
No, that's
reread.
great.
I do want to read it.
That's great.
That's-
guys. You
that's
heard it
exactly
from the guy
what
who's
we want.
listening. You guys buy the book. It's not. If it's in the link, buy it.
But
If
Brandon,
it
how will
isn't,
I have
don't
my
it.
podcast if you read it?
Yeah,
Well,
Brandon. We need you to
Then
suffer.
I can offer my what?
No, we want you like
That's
word
the
by
point
word
of the
experiencing
podcast.
this.
It's to torture Brandon. You got it, boss.
Yes.
Oh, the Torturing Brandon
gets
podcast. Great name.
gets
I
it.
love it.
Oh, I hate it.
I read, he writes, and you suffer.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, you want the next
That
chapter?
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, if it's ready.
Oh, it's ready.
Yes. Oh boy. So I do want to say that like, it was like, so this
There
is
is
2
some-
days. So Monolita, 1 day of respite. This.
Yeah.
That's how fast that happened.
Yeah.
Like it's not even been a week, and he's just had a week. You know what I mean? Anyways.
His week is over, and he's ready to go home.
I think he was ready to
He's
go home when
he's
he got
always
there.
been
But
ready to go home.
Well, he's dead, so.
By the time they reached Piper's cabin, Clarence's shoulder had swollen terribly and was throbbing so intensely he was having a hard time thinking.
okay, the chapter name is
The
chapter 9.
Weaver.
The
Wooka,
Weaver.
2593 done.
Yep. Okay, now we can begin.
What does it mean?
Word
Hold on,
count.
say that chapter again?
No,
Oh.
sorry. I was just trying to drop like there's a hidden ARG or something, but no, don't.
No, I was
Don't look too
thinking-
far into this, listeners. Don't. Try
I was
to come up
thinking
with patterns that don't
Woodcutter
exist.
2593 of the year of our good angel.
2,593
thought.
planks.
Yeah, that
done
would be
since
awkward
Clarence
because
got
the
here.
next one is 1,573.
We're just jumping around in time as a necromancer, you know?
exactly, but it's chronological from his point of view.
Yes. Everything is happening day to day, but actually, Piper is just descended of Piper Prime.
Yeah.
Ooh, Piper Prime is a sick name.
The good angel.
Druids roll out. Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's let Joe read.
One more chapter. Another chapter. By the time they reached Piper's cabin, Clarence's shoulder had swollen terribly and was throbbing so intensely he was having a hard time thinking. In here. Piper held open the cabin's front door. The room was filled with baskets and other odd knickknacks neatly organized in shelves and rows along the sides. Herbs hung from the roof's rafters, and a large solid oak work table dominated the room. An older woman in her late 40s sat in a rocking chair by the fire, a pile of herbs surrounding her. She looked up as they entered the room, and upon seeing Clarence, her eyebrows creased. Weaver Constance, we got in a bit of trouble, Piper said, walking across the room to a stool. I can see.
She's not old.
The woman.
She's 40.
I can see. No, that's
They must be
no.
old. You know, medieval days, 40 is a miracle.
Oh, that's true. I can see.
She's a modern day 40. Okay.
I can
She's
see.
got
Oh,
magic.
She's 20.
I can
God.
see. No, that's
But a
bad.
really puffy
That's
Botox
just
20.
Poultry, man.
Just no. I don't like
Being
thinking about-
almost 30 myself, 40.
You feel about
40
ready to
isn't
die.
that old. I feel it. It's coming.
It's a matter of perspective.
My for last year's birthday, I threw out my back, so like it happens to you.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
my wrist.
I was, you know what I was doing? I took a normal person's step. Ruined my day. Anyways.
Those darn normal people.
I can see, the woman said, getting up from her chair. Are you hurt? She looked about as concerned as if Piper had brought in a kitten with fleas.
No, I feel
Also,
great.
Obvious questions are obvious. I have something lodged in my calf. Oh, that's Piper. I have something lodged in my calf. You should work on Clarence. He's in bad shape. Piper gave him a look dripping with disgusted pity.
Oh man, man, he is getting it.
He gave her the axe and she was like, "Boy." Anyways, after pushing Clarence,
hear me out. Hear me out.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
He thought this woman was attractive, you know,
Everything
and suddenly
hurts.
she's just like, "You're
everything
scum."
hurts.
Yep.
Everything hurts.
Well, not scum. Just I thought you were a man, and now I've realized you're just a weak little
You're just-
boy that I have to take care of.
You're like a
the
dead
lost.
little kitten.
Exactly.
You're just this poor, like
Poor, sad, strange,
little man. Yep. After pushing Clarence forward towards the weaver, she pulled a stool from the wall and stepped on it, pulling her skirt up to her knee to look at her calf.
How
Dang.
scandalous.
Yeah, I
Oh.
know.
Calf shot? What? A line of blood ran from the top of her calf to her ankle. Grimacing, she dug her fingers into the cut, pulling out something bloody, a bone fragment. Clarence swallowed. That was not good on multiple levels. Come here. Come here. Come here. I don't know what voice to give this lady.
Yeah, just a soft voice. That's
Come
great.
here. A soft voice. I think that'll do it, the woman said, gesturing to a bench she pulled from under the table. Let's start with that thing in your arm. Piper will be all right. No, you should look after her, Clarence started. I'm fine, Clarence, Piper cut him off. You should really worry about yourself. She was already wrapping her wound with some sort of poultice. It smelled disgusting. He tried not to breathe as he walked past her. As he walked past her. The woman guided Clarence to the bench. This is nasty, she muttered, looking at his shoulder. I'd better get my pruners. She left through the back door. Clarence rubbed his nose, opening his screen. His mana was just starting to recover. One out of his 6 square clicks contained... Wait, no. His mana was just starting to recover. One out of his 6 square clicks contained a sliver of blue in it. Oh, just a little teeny tiny bitty bit. Next, it was his health bar, and 3/5 of the bar was missing. Approximated health, 40%.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy. Yeah, under half alive is not a great place to be.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing. Clarence shook his head, trying to figure out how on earth that was helpful. He would have wagered his health was more like 70 or 80%. Only 40? It was definitely off. Another useless piece of information from the supposed good angel's helpful and easily understood pop-up windows. Ah. Why are you looking at me like that? Piper asked. You're the one who gave me the axe. Startled, Clarence swiped his nose, getting rid of the pop-up screen in front of him. He locked eyes with Piper and realized he must have been grimacing at her the whole time he'd been checking his stats. Sorry, I zoned out, he muttered, glancing away, cheeks warming. Whatever. She looked out the window and back at him. How bad is it? Her tone was softer, and Clarence looked at her cautiously. Let's just say I got what I deserved. He grinned through his teeth, laughing softly. She shook her head at him. Where did you come from, Clarence? People shouldn't laugh at things like this. We almost died.
Wouldn't you?
Clarence shrugged, not knowing what to say. His life was so absurd it was comical. There was a sound of footsteps at the door, and the woman walked back with a large pair of pruners. Hold still, Clarence. Piper, come hold his arm for me, the woman beckoned. Clarence braced himself, and the weaver started
This
snipping
arm,
the fingers
meaning
free from the hand.
So she's holding the blood nymph's arm.
Oh, this arm.
Yes.
Not Clarence's
Not
arm.
his
Started
arm.
snipping off Clarence's arm to clear room to get at that.
You gotta get your arm out of the way so I can get that blood nymph finger.
Yeah.
You feel better, don't you?
Clarence
Hold still,
braces.
Clarence. Piper, come hold this arm for me. The woman beckoned. Clarence braced himself, and the weaver started snipping the fingers free from the hand as Piper held the arm. I see you two ran into some blood nymphs. Was anyone else with you? No, it was just us, Piper said. Of course it was. You should have waited another week or two for winter to set in before looking for spiderwood. It's not worth either of your lives. I don't care how big of a cut you may get. She was shaking her head as she pulled a large pair of pliers off the table in front of them. Deep breaths, Clarence. She yanked one of the 6 fingers free from Clarence's shoulder. He gasped as his head swam and tears began to drip from his eyes. We weren't looking for we weren't looking for spiderwood, Clarence stated through gritted teeth. We were barely out of town. Then what exactly were you doing? The woman asked pointedly, placing her pliers around the edges of another finger. Piper gave the older woman a brief overview of what happened, punctuated by grunts from Clarence as the woman continued her work. It didn't take long to explain, and Piper finished by the time the woman pulled the last finger from Clarence's shoulder. The ground burst open. And that's what caused all of this on your calf and his back? She asked, gesturing to Clarence. Well, your back seems to have taken the brunt of whatever happened, that's for certain. Off with your vest and shirt so we can take a look.
Giggity.
Clarence didn't want to, especially because of what he heard from Brandon. Piper was still in the room, and he knew the bone shrapnel ran all the way down to his feet. He hesitantly removed the vest and pulled off his shirt. Piper took in a deep breath. Oh my. Not like a, oh my, like a,
I know. I figured it's a.
boy.
Oh no. Oh
Yep.
my.
Yep.
what? What? Clarence asked. His back and legs hurt, but they didn't feel nearly as bad as his shoulder. You have enough bones sticking out of you to rival a spine hog, the woman said mildly. Piper, bring me some more fresh water from the well, then grind some flash root. These punctures will need a deep cleaning. I will get his legs cleaned while you're gone. That was a relief. It wasn't great that the older woman would see his backside, but Piper being there would have been 100 times more embarrassing. Piper seemed to agree with him and quickly stepped out of the room, cheeks pink. Cheeks pink. Ugh. Embarrassing. Seemingly oblivious, the healer worked quickly, helping Clarence out of his pants and getting him laid down on the bench. She took care of his legs in relative silence at first, the only noise being the sound of bone fragments landing in the metal bowl to his right. Fragments
Metal.
removed.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a advanced backwoods village.
Indeed.
Also like magic, so
And
metal magic.
Druids,
and We
though.
want magic, and we really want to emphasize you imagining bones clinking in a bowl as it's getting pulled out of his backside.
that might be it. Joe
That's
might
very
be onto something.
I liked imagining it. That felt really nice. Thinking about like the tink,
Little
Found.
ASMR.
the tink. Yes. Next week we'll be doing a Bone Clarence ASMR.
No. Yeah.
With grunting.
Clink.
Oh gosh, no. No. No, 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 no.
Why not?
All the
Does
reasons.
that just does that make you think of something else? I don't
Yeah,
know. What's
I shouldn't have brought ASMR up.
pain.
That's my bad.
Pain.
Hey,
That's what I associate with this.
fan fiction writers, get out of the comments. Leave. Thank
We
you.
don't want to hear it. We don't want to see it.
We don't want to hear it. We don't want to see it.
I'm disturbed enough
But
that I'll
if you
probably
have a
end up
link
rating
to an ASMR video,
No.
we're not watching it. Okay. She took care of his legs in relative silence at first, only noise being the sound of the bone fragments landing in the metal bowl to his right. Fragments removed as she started wrapping them in this. Fragments removed. She started wrapping them in the same sort of smelly poultice Piper had used. It burned in a pleasant healing kind of way, and Clarence could feel himself beginning to relax. Enough so that he only felt a twinge of embarrassment as she helped him get his pants back on, before telling him to lay down so she could start on his back. So, you gave Piper your axe when they started to attack. Seems a bit cowardly, don't you think? Her tone was mild, but the sharp tug she gave on a particularly stubborn bone fragment made Clarence wince. I'm not very skilled with an axe, Clarence stated, starting to feel a little less comfortable. You thought a weaver's apprentice would be? Aren't you working for Ulrich? If he gets an ear of this, he will not be pleased. You might be looking for another job. Clarence remained silent. He wasn't about to tell her what he had actually done in the woods. Druids weren't mages, but that didn't mean she liked necromancers any better. Ulrich will not be happy with you at the very least, she emphasized, scrubbing at a cut roughly. If I'm a coward, I'm a coward. What else do you want? Clarence stated, a bit exasperated. I've yet to decide what I want from you, Clarence, but becoming a man sooner than later would be a start. Dang. Oh, that's a burn. We can figure out the rest by the time my bones... We can figure out the rest in time, my bone-splitting friend. A chill ran up Clarence's spine. Did she know, or was she just guessing? She picked up the bowl of bone shards and scraped them into the fire. Oh, I know what I want from you, she said, as if suddenly coming up with the idea. How about you join me in the Good Angels Choir? We don't have nearly enough men, and there are a few songs which were lacking the proper male harmony. Clarence swallowed hard. I can't sing very well. Oh, you sound fine, she turned to him, smiling. I've heard you sing your strange little songs to yourself as you organize the lumber for the Good Angels Church. They have a nice little tingle to them, don't they? His heart stopped. She knew. Clarence didn't know how, but she knew. Cautiously, he looked up at her. If I join your choir, how will that smooth things over with Ulrich? Oh, I doubt Ulrich will even have to hear as much about this little story. If he does, I can smooth things over. Clarence? Clarence, she said in a more serious tone, I will never tell a soul about what I suspect really happened out there, but your ability to remain in town completely depends on whether or not you come to choir practices. Do I make myself clear? She smiled sweetly at him. Clarence smiled back, but not so sweetly. The next morning, Clarence went back to the blood pool, his backpack and a bundle of dry kindling in hand. The nymph that he had launched into the ground was still there, and when it saw him, it began to claw at him, digging deep rivets in the mushy ground. The others lay dead where Clarence had left him. A quick check with his magic told him that they were useless without heads. Sighing, he pulled 3 pulleys and a long rope out of his pack and set to work feeding the rope through the pulleys. Once that was finished, he strung the pulleys up on a branch over the clawing blood nymph, careful to stay out of its grasp. He tried half a dozen times to toss the loop around the creature's head, but it dodged and weaved, even grabbing the rope and locking them in a tug-of-war several times. After what felt like hours, he managed to get the loop around its head and hoisted it into the air. Clarence eyed it clinically as it thrashed, swinging erratically. Both of its femurs were broken from being launched into the sky, and it dropped to the ground, but it looked like something he could probably fix later. He tied the ropes onto a branch off the side, which hopefully was high enough that most things couldn't reach it, then left the blood nymph hanging.
Swinging would have been a good word, too.
As his last bit of business, Clarence gathered the dead blood nymphs along with a bunch of sticks into a pile, and using the dry kindling he brought, set a small bonfire. Then he carefully scoured the area for any large pieces of shattered bones and tossed them into the fire as well. He stood and watched the fire a while, making sure the damp wood had really caught. Looking back at the hanging nymph, he was happy to see that the rope looked like it was still holding well. Satisfied with this morning's work, Clarence headed back to the mill. Yo, you're leaving me hanging, man. All I wanted to do was eat you.
With my feet.
With my feet.
Oh,
man,
excuse me.
Sucking toes has a totally different meaning now. I didn't want to say that. Well, it's because what they do is they drag people to the bog, and then with their roots is how they get their sustenance.
Yeah.
Well, they are trees.
Yes.
And they have tree feet. A few days later, Clarence found some time to sneak back to the blood nymph. It hung stiffly on the rope in the center of the clearing. All that was left of the fire was a charred circle of wooden coals, nothing recognizable in the center. Walking up to the blood nymph, Clarence probed it with his mana, making a screen pop up. Blood nymph, dead. 65% usability. End tutorial. He smiled. That's all he needed. Carefully, Clarence lowered the body and began to drag it through the bog. It took him about an hour to negotiate it through the tree, brush, and pools. By the time he'd reached the clearing for his cabin, he was ready for a rest. He laid the body down and studied its legs as he drank some water from his flask. The main damage was its cracked thighs, but he thought of a solution to that while he'd been working the last couple days. Measuring the nymph's legs, he cut 8 boards to size, nailing them onto the fractured legs. When he was finished, 4 boards encased each leg, making them considerably more stable. He'd eyed his work critically. He wasn't much of a carpenter, but fortunately the damage hadn't done much to the lower legs, so the knees looked like hadn't done much to the lower legs, and the knees looked to be doing all right. Drink time. Okay. Clarence got up and started pacing. It was time to see if all of his preparation was worth it. He hoped his experiment wouldn't go the same way as the squirrel experiment had. The image of the spasming little body crept unbidden into his mind. The only reason he was willing to try again was this thing was truly a monster, and, well, was mostly tree. Bending a monstrous corpse to his will seemed more ethical. Plus, its attempt to kill Piper and himself was a pretty big strike against it. Taking a few steps away from it, Clarence took in a long, controlled breath and began singing. He focused, trying to bring the blood nymph back to life. About halfway through his mana bar and 20 or so minutes of trying, his pop-up window finally appeared. Blood nymph reincarnated. Hex rudimentary. This creature's corpse is now under your direction. Command it, and it will obey as long as it is possessed by your mana. Above the creature hovered a small pop-up with a health and mana bar. They were small in comparison to Clarence's. Its health was at 75%, and its mana only at 5%. 3 gray ticks for the mana bar, and 7 red ticks out of 10 for the health bar. You couldn't see any blue, but it had 5% mana. Stand up then,
Yeah,
Clarence
so little
commanded
that
the
you can't
creature.
see.
It obeyed stiffly, getting to its feet. Clarence nodded to himself. So far, so good. Grab that log, he pointed at the log at the edge of the clearing. Put it in the center there. He watched as the creature began to move, its steps jerky and stiff, but Clarence watched it with satisfaction as it started to make its way over to the log. The log wasn't that big, only around 4 foot in length and about half a foot wide. With seemingly little difficulty, the reincarnated blood nymph picked up the log, then carried it to the center of the clearing where it placed it down. It stood still, apparently waiting for more orders, and Clarence walked over to it and gave it a careful once-over. Depending on how long it could do this, it was going to be very helpful. He grinned slightly. After the fiasco with the squirrel, he hadn't been sure he'd actually be able to reanimate anything. But this would work. The best part being, if you could animate blood nymphs, he'd have manpower without having to kill anybody. The blood nymph was a bit creepy. It just stood there, blankly staring into the air. He eyed it distastefully, trying to ignore the slight chill that ran down his spine. Clarence turned toward the forest, hands on his hips. He took a look in the large trees that surrounded him and nodded in satisfaction. Things were looking up. "All right," he said to the blood nymph. "We've got trees to drop and logs to drag."
Well, you made it this far, bad editing and all. If you like the story, I hope you will support me by buying a copy of Clarence the Reluctant Necromancer off of Amazon as a Kindle ebook. As an ebook. There, yeah, ebook is probably the right term. Anyway, sharing it with your family and your friends would be great too. Social media if you really like it. You can also join my Patreon and get raw, uncut versions of the podcast ahead of time. So you'll have a little bit more of an in-depth understanding of, like, we'll go off on tangents and talk about a bunch of stuff that is and isn't relevant to the book. If it's too relevant, like spoilers, I'll try to cut it out. If it's not relevant and we're just joking around, then I try to cut that out too. But it really, So if you want all that, if you want all this great content and more, you can join the Patreon. I think that's all I have. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We enjoyed making it. I enjoyed it. It was a bunch of fun, and I'll see you guys on the next podcast. You have a wonderful day.